The rain poured heavily that evening, turning the driveway into streams of muddy water as Emmanuel pulled his car through the gate. His flight back had been moved up last minute due to a canceled investor meeting, and he decided not to inform anyone. He was hoping to surprise Anna and maybe spend a quiet dinner at home. But as he stepped out of the vehicle, rain immediately soaking through his jacket, something strange caught his eye. Two figures curled up together, trembling violently. A thin shawl pulled desperately over both of them sat on the concrete steps by the front door. The older figure tried to shield the smaller one from the downpour. Emmanuel's heart stopped. "Mama!" he called, unsure if his eyes were betraying him. The figure stirred weakly and raised her head. It was indeed his mother. Her face pale, lips blue from cold, rain streaming down her cheeks like tears. Next to her, barely visible under the soaked shawl, was his 8-year-old daughter from his first marriage, coughing weakly. "Emmanuel, my son," his mother whispered, her voice barely audible over the rain. He rushed toward them, shedding his coat, trying desperately to cover both of them. "What happened? Why are you outside? Why didn't anyone open the door for you?" he asked, eyes wide with disbelief as he noticed his daughter burning with fever despite being ice cold. His mother's voice cracked as she tried to speak. "We ate rice without her permission. She told us to leave. The door has been unlocked, but she said if we entered, she'd call the police." Emmanuel felt the world tilt beneath his feet. His daughter, Grace, coughed harder now, water dripping from her small frame. She could barely lift her head. The sight of her tiny body shaking with cold and illness made something snap inside him. "Grace, baby, Daddy's here," he said, his voice breaking. He lifted her into his arms, feeling how light she had become, how her breathing rattled in her chest. His mother struggled to stand, her legs barely supporting her after hours in the cold rain. "How long?" Emmanuel demanded, though he already knew the answer would destroy him. "How long have you been out here?" "Since midday," his mother managed to say. "6 hours, my son, 6 hours." The rain seemed to fall harder as the words hit him. 6 hours. His sick child, an elderly mother, had been sitting in a torrential downpour for 6 hours. Grace needed her medication every 4 hours. She had missed a dose, maybe 2. Her small fingers clutched weakly at his shirt, and he could feel the heat of her fever through her soaked clothes. Supporting his mother with one arm while carrying Grace, Emmanuel pushed through the door. The warmth of the house felt like mockery after what he had just witnessed. There on the leather couch, Anna sat scrolling through her phone, earbuds in, completely unbothered. She looked up when they entered, water pooling on the Italian marble floor. Her face shifted from surprise to annoyance, then to something harder. "You're back early," she said, pulling out her earbuds slowly, deliberately. Emmanuel stood there, rain still dripping from all three of them, his daughter wheezing in his arms, his mother swaying on her feet. "You left my mother and sick child in the rain," he said, his voice deadly quiet. Anna stood, crossing her arms. "They broke the rules. I told you about maintaining order in this house. Your mother thinks she can do whatever she wants just because she's your mother. And that child," she waved dismissively at Grace, "makes too much noise with all that coughing. Some of us are trying to work from home." "She's sick, Anna." Emmanuel's voice cracked like thunder. "She has chronic bronchitis. She needs her medication every 4 hours. You know this." "Not my child, not my problem," Anna said with a shrug that made Emmanuel's vision blur with rage. He looked down at Grace, whose eyes were half closed, her breathing shallow and labored. Then at his mother, who despite her own suffering was reaching out to touch Grace's forehead with concern. These two people, the most vulnerable in his life, had been tortured by the woman he had trusted with their care. "Get me Grace's medication, now," he commanded. Anna didn't move. "It's in the medicine cabinet where it always is. Get it yourself." Emmanuel's jaw clenched so hard his teeth ached. He carried Grace to her bedroom, his mother following with difficulty. The little girl's room, once bright with her drawings and toys, felt cold and abandoned. He laid her on the bed, stripping off her wet clothes with shaking hands. Her skin was clammy, too hot and too cold at once. "Mama, can you get towels?" he asked his mother gently. "I'll try, son," she said, limping toward the bathroom. Emmanuel found Grace's medication and gave it to her, but she struggled to swallow, coughing it back up. His hands trembled as he tried again. This time, she managed to keep it down. He wrapped her in every blanket he could find, but she still shivered. "Papa," Grace whispered, her voice so small he had to lean close to hear. "Why doesn't she like us?" The question shattered what was left of Emmanuel's composure. Tears mixed with the rain still on his face as he smoothed his daughter's wet hair. "I don't know, baby, but I promise you this will never happen again. Never." His mother returned with towels, moving slowly, painfully. Emmanuel saw how her hands shook, how her lips were still tinged blue. He stood and gently took the towels from her. "Mama, sit. Please, let me take care of you both." As he helped his mother out of her soaked clothes and into dry ones, she finally spoke the words that would haunt him forever. "This wasn't the first time, Emmanuel." He froze, hands still on the blanket he was wrapping around her shoulders. "What? She's done this before. Locked us out. Not always for so long, but..." His mother looked away, shame clouding her features. "I didn't want to worry you. You worked so hard. You seemed happy with her. And Grace's medication?" His voice was barely a whisper. Sometimes Anna would say Grace was being dramatic, that she didn't really need it on schedule, that she was just trying to get attention." His mother's tears fell freely now. "I tried to sneak it to her when Anna wasn't looking, but..." Emmanuel sank to his knees beside his mother's chair. The full weight of his failure as a son and father crashed over him. While he had been traveling for business, making deals and growing his company, his two most precious people had been suffering in his own home. He left them only long enough to make hot tea for his mother and warm soup for Grace. When he returned, he found them huddled together on Grace's small bed, his mother humming an old lullaby despite her own exhaustion. The sight of them, still caring for each other after such cruelty, broke and rebuilt his heart in the same moment. Anna appeared in the doorway, her face set in familiar lines of disdain. "So you're going to baby them all night? I suppose you'll cancel your morning meetings too?" Emmanuel stood slowly, deliberately. When he spoke, his voice carried a finality that made Anna step back. "Get out of this room, now." "Excuse me, this is my house too." "No," Emmanuel cut her off. "This stopped being your house the moment you endangered my child's life, the moment you tortured my mother. Get out of this room before I forget that I was raised to never raise my hand to anyone." Anna's mouth opened and closed like a fish. She had never seen this side of him. The successful businessman who negotiated million-dollar deals with a smile was gone. In his place stood a father and son whose family had been threatened. "You're being dramatic," Anna tried one more time. "They're fine. They're manipulating you with fake tears and..." "They were in the rain for 6 hours!" Emmanuel roared, causing Grace to whimper and his mother to place a calming hand on his arm. He lowered his voice but kept its edge. "My daughter has a fever. My mother can barely walk. And you sat in here warm and dry, scrolling through your phone while they suffered outside. There is no manipulation here except yours." "I'm your wife," Anna said, her voice taking on a desperate edge. "You're supposed to support me, not them. I told you from the beginning I wasn't comfortable with all these complications from your past." "Complications?" Emmanuel laughed, but there was no humor in it. "My mother who sold her wedding jewelry to pay for my education is a complication. My daughter who calls you auntie and tried so hard to make you love her is a complication. You always put them first," Anna screamed. "It's always about your precious mother and that child who isn't even mine. What about me? What about what I need?" "What you need," Emmanuel said quietly, "is to understand that love multiplies. It doesn't divide. My heart had room for everyone. You're the one who made it a competition." He turned his back on her, focusing on Grace, who had started coughing again. The wet, rattling sound made his chest tight with fear. His mother was rubbing Grace's back, whispering soothing words despite her own exhaustion. "This marriage is over," Emmanuel said without turning around. "I'll call my lawyer in the morning. You have until tomorrow night to pack your things and leave." "You can't be serious!" Anna's voice wavered between disbelief and fury. "You're choosing them over me? Your own wife?" Emmanuel finally looked at her, really looked at her. When had the woman he married become this cruel stranger? "I'm choosing humanity over cruelty. I'm choosing the people who love without conditions over someone who uses love as a weapon. Yes, Anna, I'm choosing them. I'll always choose them." Anna stood in the doorway for another moment, her face cycling through emotions, rage, disbelief, and finally, a cold acceptance. "You'll regret this, Emmanuel. When you're alone with your burdens, you'll wish you had chosen differently." "The only thing I regret," Emmanuel said, turning back to his family, "is not seeing who you really were sooner." The night was long and difficult. Grace's fever spiked twice, and both times Emmanuel found himself bargaining with God, promising anything if his baby girl would just be okay. His mother, despite her own ordeal, insisted on helping. They took turns placing cool cloths on Grace's forehead, making sure she took her medication, and simply being there when she woke, confused and scared. Around 3 in the morning, Grace's fever finally broke. She opened her eyes, clearer now, and saw both her father and grandmother watching over her. "Papa? Grandma?" she whispered. "We're here, baby," Emmanuel said, taking her small hand in his. "We're not going anywhere." "Is Auntie Anna still angry?" Grace asked, and even after everything, Emmanuel heard concern for Anna in his daughter's voice. That's who his daughter was, kind even to those who hurt her. "Don't worry about Auntie Anna," he said gently. "Just rest." His mother started humming again, the same lullaby she used to sing to Emmanuel when he was sick. Grace's eyes fluttered closed, but this time her breathing was easier, more peaceful. Emmanuel met his mother's eyes over Grace's sleeping form. "I'm sorry, Mama," he whispered. "I'm so sorry." "Shh," his mother said, reaching over to touch his face. "You didn't know. She was careful to hide it when you were around. But I should have seen. I should have protected you both." "You're protecting us now," his mother said simply. "That's what matters." Morning came, gray and subdued, matching Emmanuel's mood. He left his mother and Grace sleeping and went to make breakfast. Anna was already in the kitchen, dressed impeccably as always, sipping coffee as if the previous night hadn't happened. "I assume you've come to your senses," she said without looking up from her phone. Emmanuel ignored her, focusing on making porridge for Grace and tea for his mother. His silence seemed to anger Anna more than any words could have. "You're really going to throw away 3 years of marriage for them?" she pressed. Emmanuel finally responded, his voice calm but firm. "I'm ending a marriage that was built on deception. You pretended to care about my family to get me to marry you. But the mask slipped, Anna. I've seen who you really are." "I'm the woman who stood by you." Anna slammed her cup down. "I'm the one who attended all those boring business dinners, who smiled at your clients, who made you look good. And in private, you tortured the 2 people who mean everything to me," Emmanuel countered. "Do you know what my mother did for me? She worked 18-hour days as a seamstress. She went hungry so I could eat. She walked miles to work to save bus fare for with my school fees. And Grace? She's an innocent child who just wanted a mother figure to love her. But you saw them both as threats to your perfect life." Anna's laugh was bitter. "Perfect? You call living with your past perfect? Every time that child visited, I was reminded that you had a life before me. Every time your mother came over, I felt like I was being judged, like I wasn't good enough for her precious son. You weren't being judged, Anna. You were being loved. But you couldn't see it because you were too busy keeping score in a game no one else was playing." Emmanuel filled a tray with breakfast for his mother and Grace. As he turned to leave, Anna grabbed his arm. "Please," she said. And for the first time, he heard real fear in her voice. "We can work this out. I'll try harder with them." Emmanuel gently removed her hand. "You left my sick child in the rain for 6 hours. You denied her medication. You made my mother sit outside in a storm because she ate rice without your permission. There's no trying harder from here, Anna. There's only leaving." He spent the day caring for Grace and his mother, calling in sick to work for the first time in years. His assistant was shocked, but Emmanuel didn't care. His priorities had been violently reorganized. He made doctor's appointments for both of them, cooked simple meals, and simply sat with them, making up for all the times he should have been there, but wasn't. Grace, resilient as children are, bounced back quicker than expected. By afternoon, she was sitting up in bed, coloring in her book while her grandmother told her stories. The sight of them together, his past and his future united in love, made Emmanuel's decision even clearer. His lawyer came by that evening with the divorce papers. Anna had spent the day alternating between fury and pleading, but Emmanuel remained unmoved. As she packed her things, she made one last attempt. "You know what your problem is, Emmanuel?" she said from the doorway of what used to be their bedroom. "You're too soft. That's why that first wife of yours left you. And that's why you'll end up alone." Emmanuel looked up from where he was helping Grace with her coloring. "My first wife died in a car accident, Anna. You know that. The fact that you would use her memory to hurt me shows exactly who you are. And as for being alone," he gestured to his mother and daughter, "I'm exactly where I need to be." Anna left that night with her suitcases and her pride. Emmanuel stood at the window holding Grace's hand while his mother sat nearby. They watched the taxi pull away, taking with it 3 years of Emmanuel's life, but none of his heart. "Are you sad, Papa?" Grace asked, looking up at him with eyes too wise for her age. Emmanuel knelt down to her level. "No, baby, I'm not sad. I'm grateful." "For what?" "For you, for Grandma, for finally seeing what really matters." The weeks that followed were challenging but healing. Emmanuel restructured his work schedule to be home more. He hired a nurse to help with Grace's medical needs when he had to travel, but he made sure those trips were shorter and less frequent. His mother moved in permanently, and the house that had once felt like a battlefield became a home again. Grace's health improved dramatically without the constant stress. Her laughter returned, filling the house with joy. She and her grandmother became inseparable, baking together, working in the small garden Emmanuel helped them plant, and creating a bond that transcended generations. 3 months after Anna left, Emmanuel received a letter from her. She wrote about struggling, about realizing too late what she had lost. She asked for forgiveness, for another chance. Emmanuel read it once, then filed it away. Some bridges, once burned, needed to stay that way. One evening, as they sat together for dinner, a simple meal his mother had prepared with Grace as her enthusiastic helper, Grace asked a question that had been on her mind. "Papa, will we always be together?" Emmanuel looked at his daughter, then at his mother, both watching him with trust in their eyes. "Always, baby. We're a family, a real family, and real families stick together no matter what." His mother smiled, reaching over to squeeze his hand. "You become the man I always knew you would be, Emmanuel. Because of you, Mama. Everything good in me comes from you." A year passed. Emmanuel's business thrived despite his reduced travel schedule, or perhaps because of it. Clients appreciated dealing with a man who understood priorities. Grace started school, her health stable enough for her to join her classmates in most activities. His mother, no longer living in fear, seemed to shed years. She joined a church group, made friends, and often had visitors who marveled at her strength and kindness. They traveled together to his mother's village for her 70th birthday. The whole community came out to celebrate the woman who had sacrificed so much and raised such a successful son. Grace danced with the other children, her laughter mixing with the drums and singing. Emmanuel watched his mother being honored, tears streaming down his face. "Thank you," he whispered to the evening sky, to God, to the universe. "Thank you for showing me the truth in time." An elder approached him during the celebration. "Your mother speaks highly of you. She says you chose family over comfort." Emmanuel nodded. "It wasn't a choice, sir. It was remembering who I am and where I come from." The elder smiled. "That is wisdom. Many men forget. They chase success and lose their souls. But you have found both." As they drove back to the city the next day, Grace asleep between them, his mother spoke softly. "I never wanted to come between you and happiness, Emmanuel." "You didn't, Mama. You showed me what happiness really is. It's not a perfect house or a beautiful wife who looks good at parties. It's this, us together, taking care of each other, building something real." His mother patted his hand. "Your father would be proud." "I hope so, Mama, I hope so." The years went by. Grace grew strong and bright, excelling in school and never forgetting the lessons of kindness her grandmother taught her. She became a doctor, inspired by her own experiences to help children with chronic illnesses. At her graduation, she thanked two people above all: her father, who chose love over convenience, and her grandmother, who showed her that strength comes in many forms. Emmanuel never remarried. He dated occasionally, but he was careful, watchful. He had learned that some people are skilled at wearing masks, at pretending to be what you need until they have what they want. He focused instead on being the best father and son he could be. His mother lived to see Grace graduate from medical school, get married to a kind man who understood the importance of family, and hold her first great-grandchild. On her last day, surrounded by 3 generations of love, she held Emmanuel's hand. "I have no regrets," she whispered. "You gave me more than I ever dreamed. You gave me everything, Mama." Emmanuel replied through tears. "Everything." After she passed, Emmanuel and Grace went through her few possessions. In an old tin box, they found photographs, letters, and a journal. The journal detailed every sacrifice, every moment of joy, every prayer for her son and granddaughter. But what struck Emmanuel most were the entries from those dark days with Anna. "I don't blame her," his mother had written. "She doesn't understand that love isn't about possession. But my Emmanuel will learn. He will choose correctly when the time comes, and I will endure whatever I must until he does." Grace read over his shoulder, her own tears falling. She protected us even when she was suffering. That's what real love does, Emmanuel said. It endures, it sacrifices, it builds rather than tears down. At the funeral, hundreds came to pay their respects. People whose clothes she had mended, children she had fed when their parents couldn't, young people she had encouraged to stay in school. Anna was not among them. Emmanuel heard she had remarried quickly to a man who didn't have the complications of family loyalty. He wished her well, but distantly, the way you might think of a stranger whose story you once knew. Standing at his mother's graveside, Grace's hand in his, her children playing nearby under their father's watchful eye, Emmanuel spoke his final words to the woman who had made him. "Thank you, Mama, for teaching me that real wealth isn't in bank accounts but in the love we share. For showing me that family isn't about blood alone but about who shows up, who stays, who endures. For being the example I needed even when I was too blind to see it. Rest now. We've got it from here." As they walked away from the cemetery, Grace's daughter tugged on Emmanuel's coat. "Grandpa, will you tell me about Great-Grandma again?" Emmanuel smiled, lifting her into his arms. "Of course, little one. Let me tell you about the strongest woman I ever knew. She taught me that love isn't about control or conditions. It's about choosing each other again and again, especially when it's hard. Is that why you chose her and Mommy over that mean lady?" Children, in their innocence, always see truth clearly. "Yes, sweetheart, that's exactly why, and I've never regretted it. Not for a single day." As they drove home, 3 generations in the car, just as it had been years ago, Emmanuel reflected on the journey. From that terrible night in the rain to this moment of peace and fulfillment, every step had been worth it. His mother had been right. Love multiplies when given freely. His heart, far from being divided, had only grown. The house was warm when they arrived, filled with the voices of family. Grace's husband was cooking dinner, the scent of spices filling the air. The children ran to play with toys their great-grandmother had saved from Grace's childhood. Emmanuel sat in his mother's favorite chair, watching his family with deep contentment. He thought of Anna sometimes, wondered if she ever understood what she had thrown away in her need to control and possess. But mostly, he thought of his mother's words. Real love builds up. He had built something beautiful from the ashes of that failed marriage, a family bound not by law or obligation, but by choice and devotion. That night, as he tucked his grandchildren into bed in the same room where he had once nursed Grace through her fever, they asked for a story. "Tell us about the night in the rain again, Grandpa." Emmanuel sat on the bed gathering his thoughts. "It was the worst and best night of my life," he began. "Worst because I discovered how cruel someone could be to the people I loved. Best because it opened my eyes to what really mattered." "And what really matters, Grandpa?" Emmanuel smiled, thinking of his mother's gentle face, of Grace's trusting eyes that terrible night, of all the moments that had led them here. "Family," he said simply. "The people who love you when you're at your weakest, who stand by you when the world turns cold, who teach you that real strength isn't about power over others, but about lifting each other up. That's what really matters. That's what lasts." As his grandchildren drifted off to sleep, Emmanuel stood by the window, looking out at the peaceful night. No rain tonight, just stars and the quiet breathing of sleeping children. He whispered a prayer of gratitude to his mother, wherever she was, for teaching him the greatest lesson of all. True love endures, it protects, it sacrifices, and it always chooses compassion over cruelty, building up rather than tearing down. In the end, that's what makes a family. That's what makes a life worth living. The circle was complete, from his mother to him, from him to Grace, from Grace to her children. The legacy of love continued, unbroken and eternal. And in that continuity, Emmanuel found his greatest success, his truest wealth, his deepest peace. The mother who endured had won in the end, not through force or manipulation, but through the simple, revolutionary act of choosing love again and again until love was all that remained.